Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Market Down Podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, joined this week by Chad Big Bad Johnson and James Gisante. Obviously, this week has been dominated by one big story, and that has been MJF's saga from before Double or Nothing all the way through this most recent episode of Dynamite. We will start back before Double or Nothing when it was reported that MJF was not at the AEW Fan Fest. There were reports some people were seeing him in the casino. Apparently, all of AEW representation, the security stuff, they just couldn't get a hold of him. There were then reports that he was booking a flight out of Vegas. It was all very, very iffy whether or not he was actually going to show up to the pay-per-view. Now, he did indeed show up to the pay-per-view. He wrestled his match against Wardlow. But he told Sean Ross Sapp himself, that he had showed up at the last minute, went, did the job, and left immediately thereafter. And shortly after that, PWI reported that it was expected he probably wasn't going to be on TV for several episodes, perhaps even longer. Now, apparently, sometime between then and Dynamite, Tony Khan and MJF met up, hashed something out, whether that is they were able to raise his pay and agree something on that, or at least agree to work on this as a storyline and continue to work behind the scenes. But either way, MJF was on Dynamite this past week, where he just took a blowtorch to Tony Khan for 8 minutes. So if you haven't seen that promo, I highly recommend it. It's probably the best promo in the company's history. It was unbelievable. But James, obviously this all stems from MJF's displeasure with his contract. He doesn't feel that he's being paid enough, especially to where he is on the card, in the ratings, what he does for the company. The man wants more money, and this is his way of going about getting it.
Let's go over certain things. One, MJF is a draw. He always delivers, whether it's in the ring, whether it's on the mic. He is, without a doubt, AEW's top prospect for the future. We talk about all the pillars, we talk about all the talent that they have for the future, and there is undoubtedly a lot of those guys who we could see carrying the company for years to come. But there's one guy above all who just shows he reeks of that star appeal. He reeks of charisma. And that's MJF. He, I'm sure, is worth more than the contract that he currently has. But the thing to remember is that contract was signed when he was nobody. When he was an indie guy who didn't have a name and was proving himself for the first time.
I should cut in really quick. And Wade Keller has reported that MJF has gotten a raise since his initial contract.
Yes.
But it's still nowhere near the level that A, he thinks he should be at, or B, to the level of certain recent signees in AEW, mainly the ex-WWE guys he called out on Wednesday.
And I'm sure that's true. I am sure that there are guys that have come in since him who have better contracts than he does. But the truth is, they bring their own value. They do. And I want MJF to make the money he deserves. I truly, in my heart of hearts, give him the bank because he will be carrying that company for years and years to come. He's only 26. We haven't even reached the peak of his potential. We haven't even gotten near it yet. And that's terrifying to think about considering how good he is now. But we are way away from how good he will be. And yeah, let him get his money. But a Bryan Danielson, who might not be at the top of the card consistently, has more than put in his work, and his value speaks for itself. CM Punk, the biggest draw in AEW, more than speaks for itself. Sure, there are other guys like maybe a Keith Lee or an Adam Cole who you could say, what is their value in relation to MJF? But they've all built their names over years and years and have earned their contracts, even if they didn't necessarily earn it in AEW yet. I feel for MJF. I understand, fight for yourself, because that's the world we live in. If you're not fighting for yourself, nobody else will. But there are ways of doing it. There are right ways. There are wrong ways of doing it. At least in my opinion, there are. And I don't necessarily think MJF's doing it in the right way. Now, let's be clear. We don't know what's real, what's not. They're doing a beautiful job of blurring the lines with this story. I do genuinely believe that there are grievances regarding money and other contract stipulations. I absolutely believe that. But I also think we probably got to a point where if the issues aren't fully resolved, they're at the very least a lot better than they were. And now we're in the middle of a work. We shot ourselves into a work. Go figure. I feel bad for any fan that paid money to see him. I don't think that's the professional way of handling that situation. And
that promo was so good, though. I would be thrilled to pay for that.
No, I'm talking about when he no-showed. I'm talking about when he no-showed at FanFest.
Yeah.
If I paid to see him and he wasn't there, I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed, and I think I have every right to be pissed. If I'm Wardlow, who was in the middle of this hot-ass storyline, I'd be a little pissed, because guess what? Nobody's talking about me. They're talking about MJF's contract and what he's going to do instead. Doesn't matter how dominant he looked. Didn't matter that was the match that we've been waiting for almost 2 years. All for nothing, because guess what? MJF's contract is more important. And I'm not thrilled with that. And on a bigger level, if this is a shoot that got turned into a work, or let's say this is more of a work than we all think it might have been, you got to be careful if you're AEW, because right now, one of the big things you have is the trust and support of your fan base. If your fan base feels like it can't trust you the way that we have for all these years, and we're just going to get worked like constantly, on one hand, that's great, because, hey, it's wrestling. I want to be worked. I do. Even if we don't admit it, that's what wrestling is about. We want to believe what we're watching is real. But you got to know the balance of that. And let's see if they could toe that line, because it's going to be very difficult for them moving forward, I think. And I will say, if MJF's goal was to become even hotter than he was a week ago when he was pretty goddamn hot, mission accomplished. So I don't know what comes next for him, but it's probably going to be big.
I am very curious to see if he is on Dynamite next week, because obviously, for those of you who hadn't seen it, he cursed at the end of the promo. He called Tony a fucking mark, and they had to censor it on TBS. So I'm curious just to see, at least maybe if this is now a work, if he is on Dynamite, just to maybe get him off TV for a while and figure out where they're going to go from here, both backstage and on screen. But it's such an odd shift in dynamic between Tony and MJF. There are plenty of people who are like, yeah, they used to call each other all the time and work on storylines and stuff. And now we have this. And it's curious, Chad, like hearing that. It's like, okay, maybe this whole thing is a storyline. Maybe it's not. Like, I do genuinely think MJF wants more money, and I agree that he should be getting it. But now this is one of the best like shoot work blurred line things I think I've seen in a really long time. But that promo was so good, I don't care anymore. I'm so fucking here for it.
Okay, so because we are a podcast, obviously we have to try to speculate from all aspects. So I'll do the deep dive for sake of conversation. However, Rev, I'm with you. I hope this is fake, because this storyline and the build and that promo was so epic that I love it. But we gave Sasha and Naomi their fair share of shit, so we have to give MJF his fair share of shit as well. Speaking as an ex-manager to a few places and also speaking as a disgruntled employee, I can almost connect with what he's saying. I know for a fact, even if this is a work, that there are elements of truth running all throughout this. So with that being said, the manager side of me says, I get it. However, you do not handle things this way. We cannot. You're going to be hot as fish grease. You're going to get backstage heat. You're gonna bubble and boil and become a bigger star. However, there are those, like James said, it's a balance. There are things that you don't do, and there are things that can be done. The meet and greet is really dickish. Like you don't do that to fans, regardless. You're already a heel. You already have heel heat, so people are not supposed to like you. The people that do like you and would like to meet and greet with you, you kind of have to show up for them. And also, like James was saying, when he first started and first signed the contract, he wasn't as had the potential, which is scary because still now I see that he has even more potential and he can be greater than this, which is not something a lot of people can say. But I mean, we know how this goes. You get a contract, you make yourself hot, you work that time, then you renegotiate. That's the professional way to do things. That's just how we do it. We understand that you want more money, you get a raise based on your performance. So yes, he absolutely deserves a raise. He deserves the money, yes, but you got to go about it properly. But then also, I get him being the biggest draw at AEW besides Bryan and CM Punk, and him getting paid peanuts. So I'm really in between with this story. Again, I hope it's a work because I like the output. I just don't like the dickish ways he's going about the outside politics.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I wonder where the line was for him that he started to resort to this stuff. Like, obviously, he has been poking, I don't want to say poking fun, but he has been talking about the fact that his contract is up in 2024 and he might jump ship to WWE even before this was public knowledge that he was so frustrated with his contract. And it was, we all just kind of thought it was to draw heat, but perhaps it was to maybe start getting a ball rolling on some negotiations of like, hey, I'm a little fed up here with my contract. Not even fed up. I was just like, I'd like more money. You know, I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting here and I'm not being paid accordingly. Like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Tony. Like, come on, like, let's get this done. And Tony just kept putting it off, or ignoring it. And MJF had to resort to more drastic measures. Now, I agree with you, Chad, to a certain point. Like, these drastic measures are crossing a line of professionalism, especially no showing the fan event. Like, I understand that he is the heel, and even when you meet him at these fan events, he's still an asshole to you because it is very rare MJF ever breaks character. But you still get, like, not showing up for that is, I think, a step too far. Showing up to the pay-per-view late, working, and then leaving, I think that's a little bit more of a better negotiation tactic than bailing on your fans.
Agreed.
So, it's really tough, man. Like, the dude, like I said, the dude is always working, so it's hard to tell when he's serious and when he's not. I mean, I think I read a story the other day throughout all this where he got Stone Cold to do an in-character podcast bit, like, before he was even in AEW. Like, he was like a no-name indie guy, and he was like, nah, dude, I don't break kayfabe. Like, you're going to be Stone Cold. I'm going to be MJF. Like, so it's really tough to see, like, what he's doing, where he's going. But as it stands right now, from what I'm seeing, I think something got worked out because I don't think he would have been allowed to go onto TV this past Wednesday and say what he said without Tony okaying that. Because there's no way Tony's putting him on TV in the first place if they hadn't talked and worked something out. So the fact that he even was announced for TV said to me, like, okay, this leading, they got something going here. And then for him to go out and say that, I think there's got to be something in place somewhere to where this is maybe not okay, but it's in a situation where they can fix it.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I mean, for me as a fan, they have to fix this. Like there's no way to not fix this because say what we want, you cannot lose an MJF. That is a one in a million star, a gem, a diamond that with just the right amount of pressure. He's already hot. I don't see in my mind, I can't fathom ever trying to lose such an asset like that. So you got to make him happy. You have to.
And the truth is too, while I agree, I've said it before, if I'm AEW, I give him whatever he wants. But let's say he does want to leave. Like I think he's stupid if he wants to go. But if he does want to leave, make the most of it. Don't be WWE where you have this guy, oh, I want to go home, but I'm not going to release you, but I'll keep you home. Like, I'm not going to let you go anywhere, but I'm going to pay you to sit on your couch. Don't do that. Fuck that. If he wants to go, he can go when his contract's up, but work him until the end of the contract. Have him show up on TV while this is the hottest fucking thing AEW can do. No,
I agree with that.
Yeah, no, he'll get paid. There's going to be great TV. And then if he wants to go, when the time comes, he can go.
I saw somebody fantasy book something where it's like Tony is Vince, Punk is Cena, and now MJF's Punk, and Punk should win the title and leave.
Yeah,
and do it right. Like actually have him go a bunch of places and defend it there. Like that'd be, if they actually did it right and he was gone for like 6 months and they didn't have the title, like that would be insane. But they got to work something out first. And like I said, hopefully they're in a better spot than they were before.
I know we're getting into something else with this, but I have a weird feeling that Punk is not going to have a long reign. And I know we kind of said that with Hangman, but I have a feeling Punk is not going to have a long reign. He's champion because of Forbidden Door, and they want to have a big guy as champion to have a match. And then I could see MJF possibly taking it from him, and then maybe us getting that storyline for a little while.
Because I'm 100% cool with that.
I can't imagine 2024 being when they finally pull the trigger on him. I can't. I can't.
It's too long, I feel like. And although we have learned, of course, with AEW that patience is indeed a virtue, I think that if you don't strike while the iron is hot in this situation, we lose as fans.
Absolutely.
It's difficult though, because I don't think you can do it too soon with Punk, obviously, because he just won the title. But at the same time, like you want to do it with MJF a little closer. So like, but the closer you get to him leaving, the better that storyline kind of is, because then Punk could be like, oh, like I kind of did the same thing. Like my contract was going to expire and I was going to be champ and leave. And I kind of did. But then I got all fucked up. But so like the closer it is to 2024 and when his contract's up, like it lends to that aspect. But the closer it is to this, it also lends to, that aspect as well. So there's going to be a bit of a balancing act there if they do that, which I have to imagine they do. Punk winning the title easily is setting up for him versus MJF. Like that's the whole point of him winning this title.
I mean, it kind of has to. I mean,
right?
They could do something unpredictable that we won't expect, but I just the stories write themselves at this point. Like you have to finish that story at some point.
Yeah. I do think though, like MJF probably has to be like low-key, either get a raise and be happy, or like low-key get an extension and they don't tell anybody, because I don't know if they would want to give him the title the way he's currently acting. You know what I mean? So, but this is obviously an ongoing situation and we will cover it on a weekly basis whenever we hear more stuff. We're, like we said with the Sasha and Naomi stuff, but that's been kind of quiet lately. So that's that. All right, well, let's move on here to another story. Bit of a more delicate situation here. So Jake Atlas, who is currently under contract by AEW, though he doesn't appear on the websites or on TV like ever,
he is injured. He has been injured for a while.
Fair.
Yeah.
But he was arrested recently for domestic violence. Now, obviously, this is a terrible situation because domestic violence is a terrible thing. But the other aspect of this story is Jake Atlas has been very openly gay for quite a long time. And his boyfriend of 2 years was the victim in the situation, but was also another professional wrestler who was still in the closet. Now, somebody went and found the police report, and that wrestler's name was mentioned in the report and caused him to accidentally be outed. Now, we're not going to mention the wrestler's name because, you know, he unfortunately wasn't able to come out on his own terms, and we just feel it to be a bit disrespectful to be saying his name in a public forum. But James, you are a bit more read up on this situation than I am, so please fill in any details I missed.
There's not a lot to say that you haven't already mentioned. It's an awful situation. One for the wrestler who was on the receiving end, unfortunately, of the abuse, who not only had to go through such a horrible experience, but also had to be outed, which is against their will, which is just heartbreaking. You never want that to happen. And, you know, this is ugly. Jake Atlas had a lot of support. He, being an openly gay wrestler, you know, he was, or I don't want to say is, but he was a beacon for a lot of LGBT people who were wrestling fans, who saw that, you know, his gimmick wasn't a caricature. He wasn't a stereotype. He was just a wrestler who happened to be gay, and proudly gay. So obviously he's not the benchmark for, you know, gay wrestlers or for gay people, but it's sad to see somebody who had a lot of meaning and was a good case of representation have such an ugly turnaround here. One of the things that was reported was his profile got taken down off the AEW roster page after this, which isn't true. He hasn't been on the roster page for quite some time, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here with AEW, if they're going to hold on to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get released. You know, AEW has released people before in similar situations.
Like Jimmy Havoc, right?
Yes.
And that was like early in their tenure too.
Yeah, Jimmy Havoc. And it's just ugly. And I really love that we're not mentioning the other wrestler, just because, even though you guys, I'm sure, already know it, it's the right thing to do until that person can come out and speak on their own behalf. But just an ugly situation. And hey, you know, if you're a fan and you're interested in these kinds of things, I understand. But maybe think about the things that you share online. That's none of your fucking business. You know, if you know, this had nothing to do with you, and guess what? Somebody's already hard life just got made worse because of you, or more complicated because of you. So bravo. Think about it next time. You know, just think about it.
Well put, James. Well put. Chad, do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. I first would like to send my well wishes to the victim as well. I think Jake Atlas is an embarrassment. This is very embarrassing, especially for someone who, as James said, was such a beacon for that community. I mean, you were a beacon of light. Everybody, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, James, when he was hired by WWE, wasn't this, like, this was known, right? Wasn't this already? Okay,
yes.
So
he did not come in and come out. He was out.
He was out and then hired, right? Correct. Yeah. So, like, I mean, when I think back to wrestlers like Darren Young, who I almost feel like was let go for reasons of this sort, for you to come in openly gay and just to have that representation to the world was amazing. For you to just be this guy is beyond me. I was unaware of this story until today, and I have to continue sending well wishes to the victim, because like I mean, abuse is never okay. We know that abuse is never okay, but then also putting your partner in a predicament where, as James said, everything in their life now becomes much more complex because you couldn't keep your hands to yourself is really, really a douchebag move.
Thank you for that, Chad. I just want to say, you guys have been speaking on the representation, and there are other wrestlers in AEW that hopefully this community can look to. Obviously, the Sonny Kiss being an example, Anthony Bowens as well. I think AEW does a pretty good job with that. And obviously, this being the day of recording, this being the first day of Pride Month, AEW has been starting to highlight those wrestlers on their roster. So, look to those people. But come on, Jake, man, like this is a terrible situation, and I think that's probably the best thing we can say about it. So not to end this podcast on a terrible note, but that is pretty much the news for this week. There really wasn't a lot else going on. The headlines were just dominated by MJF all week. Anything that actually did happen pretty much got buried by that. So much like MJF got buried by Wardlow on Sunday. So thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. We are so very close to having James wrap and dye his hair green. I believe we were only 17 subscribers away from a 100. So I don't know, call somebody, text them, have them subscribe. It'd be awesome. Be sure to check out all of our social media stuff. It'll be in the description below. So for Chad Big Bad Johnson and James Gisante, I'm Nick Cummings. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you here next time on the Mark It Down podcast. Have a good one, everyone.